The sun, a herald of hope for the free peoples of Middle-earth, has long stood as a bane to the forces of darkness. Orcs, born of Morgoth's malice and sustained by Sauron's will, cowered under its rays. Yet not all orcs were equally bound by this limitation. Saruman's Uruk-hai shattered this barrier, marching into battle under the noonday sun, their fearlessness a testament to Saruman's cruel ingenuity. But what if this characteristic was not confined to the Uruk-hai? What if Morgoth's entire army of corrupted beings could stride into the light unflinching? How might this have reshaped the histories of the First, Second, and Third Ages? This hypothetical uproots a foundational balance in Tolkien's legendarium, wherein light serves as a divine weapon against the shadow. If orcs were unhindered by Anor's rays, Middle-earth's wars would stretch endlessly, unrelentingly, into both day and night. In the First Age, Morgoth's forces were vulnerable to the rising of the sun, which illuminated the Eldar's lands and rendered orcs sluggish and fearful. When Anor first rose, the elves and their allies surged against Morgoth's armies, temporarily reclaiming Ardgalin from his dominion. If orcs had not feared the sun, these battles would have played out differently. Morgoth's troops would have been relentless, their assaults unimpeded, forcing the elves to retreat into defensible strongholds such as Gondolin and Doriath far earlier. By the time of the Second Age, Sauron's dominion would have expanded even faster. During the War of the Last Alliance, light brought by Anor was a source of morale for the armies of Gil-galad and Elendil as they laid siege to Barad-dûr. An orc force, immune to sunlight, would have mounted effective counterattacks, making the 7-year siege an almost insurmountable challenge. Fast forward to the Third Age, where the Fellowship's journey and the ensuing War of the Ring relied heavily on light's protective influence. From the earliest chapters of the Fellowship of the Ring, Frodo and his companions survived their flight from the Nazgûl, in part due to daylight's dampening effect on their pursuers. Orcs, without a fear of light, would have ensured relentless hunts, making the Shire, Bree, and Rivendell less safe. Moreover, key battles would have played out differently. Helm's Deep was defended successfully because the Rohirrim capitalized on the Uruk-hai's exclusionary trait, being uniquely adapted to sunlight. If every orc mirrored the Uruk-hai's resilience, Saruman's army would have needed no rest or tactical advantage from nightfall. Gandalf's arrival at dawn, a turning point in the siege, would have carried no symbolic weight. Even the siege of Minas Tirith, a pivotal moment in the War of the Ring, relied on dawn's arrival to counteract the oppressive shadow cast by Mordor. Eomer's charge and Aragorn's timely reinforcement depended on the breaking morale of orcs under daylight dark. A fearless orc horde would have rendered these efforts futile, leaving Gondor vulnerable to collapse. This hypothetical reframes Tolkien's narrative, challenging the delicate balance of power between light and darkness. How else might Middle-earth have adapted to this unyielding threat? Light and darkness are more than physical phenomena in Tolkien's legendarium. They are woven into the metaphysical fabric of Arda. From the two trees of Valinor to the Silmarils and the rising of Anor, light symbolizes divine grace, hope, and renewal. Orcs' aversion to sunlight is not simply a weakness. It is a manifestation of their estrangement from Eru Ilúvatar and the corruption wrought by Morgoth. But what would it mean for Middle-earth if orcs no longer feared the sun? In Tolkien's mythology, light is not just illumination, but a potent weapon against evil. When the Valar created the sun and moon after the destruction of the two trees, the Silmarillion, these celestial bodies served as a bulwark against Morgoth's growing influence. The light of the sun was particularly anathema to his creations, including orcs, and represented the triumph of the Valar's will over the shadow. If orcs were immune to the sun, this delicate balance would crumble. The symbolic association of light with hope and renewal would lose its potency. Imagine the sun rising on a battlefield, no longer scattering the enemy or lifting the spirits of the free peoples. In such a world, orcs would embody an unrelenting, pervasive darkness. no longer confined by shadow, but instead marching boldly under the sun. This shift would also alter the thematic resonance of Tolkien's stories. The struggle between light and dark, central to narratives like The Lord of the Rings, would lose much of its moral weight. Hope in the face of overwhelming darkness, epitomized by the endurance of Frodo and Sam in the barren lands of Mordor, would feel less assured in a world where light no longer held dominion over the shadow. The Valar's crafting of the sun and moon was one of their greatest victories over Morgoth. Yet, if orcs could stride unflinchingly beneath their radiance, it might signify a weakening of divine authority in Arda. In Tolkien's cosmology, Morgoth's corruption seeped into the very fabric of the world, tainting even the light of the sun itself. If all orcs shared the Uruk-hai's resilience, this might imply an evolution of Morgoth's lingering influence. Over time, his malice, still present in the foundations of Arda, could extend to nullify the sun's effect on his creations. This would reflect a deepening corruption in Middle-earth, suggesting that the forces of darkness were encroaching further into the divine order established by the Valar. Yet, even in such a grim scenario, Tolkien's central theme of hope might persist, albeit in a transformed way. Without light as a source of protection, the Free Peoples would need to rely more heavily on unity, courage, and ingenuity. The resilience of hobbits, the unyielding valor of men, and the timeless wisdom of the elves would take on even greater significance in a world where the sun no longer assured safety. Galadriel's gift to Frodo, a phial containing the light of Eärendil's star, might shine even brighter as a symbol of hope in a world where the sun itself was no longer enough. Such artifacts, imbued with the undiluted light of the two trees, could become critical in the fight against darkness. The implications of a world where orcs did not fear light ripple through every layer of Tolkien's legendarium, challenging the metaphysical underpinnings of his stories. The histories of Middle-earth, meticulously chronicled across the First, Second, and Third Ages, are deeply shaped by the interplay of light and darkness. Many victories of the Free Peoples depended on the orcs' fear of light. But in a world where orcs did not cower under Anor's rays, pivotal battles and events would unfold in vastly different ways. The first rising of the sun heralded hope for the Eldar and terror for Morgoth's forces. As Anor ascended the sky, Morgoth's orcs faltered, allowing the Noldor to claim victory in battles like the Dagor Nuin Gileath and reclaim swaths of Ardgalen, the Silmarillion Chapter 8. Without their fear of light, however, Morgoth's armies would have maintained their momentum. The siege of Angband, already tenuous, might have failed entirely. Even hidden strongholds like Gondolin and Doriath, relying on their secrecy and the protective cover of daylight to deter attacks, could have faced earlier and more frequent assaults. The tragedy of the Nea-Naiath Arnodiad, the Battle of Unnumbered Tears, already a devastating defeat, might have ended with the complete annihilation of the Noldor's remaining forces, as orcs could have fought relentlessly day and night. In the Second Age, the War of the Last Alliance was a beacon of unity among elves and men against Sauron's dominion. The Siege of Barad-dûr lasted 7 grueling years, with battles often timed to capitalize on daylight. The morale of Sauron's orc armies, already strained, was further sapped by the sun's constant presence over the battlefield. If orcs had been immune to sunlight, the protracted siege might have turned in Sauron's favor. With the ability to launch ceaseless counterattacks, orcs could have worn down the Alliance's forces far more quickly. Gil-galad and Elendil, already sacrificing their lives to defeat Sauron, might have faced an even bloodier final confrontation, potentially altering the fate of Isildur and the One Ring itself. The Third Age provides some of the most iconic moments in Middle-earth's history, where the interplay of light and shadow directly influenced the outcomes of battles. At Helm's Deep, the Uruk-hai demonstrated how fearlessness in daylight could turn the tide. Saruman's hybrid warriors breached the fortress walls and held their ground, until Gandalf's timely arrival with reinforcements. If all orcs shared this resilience, Helm's Deep might have fallen entirely, forcing Rohan into retreat. Similarly, during the siege of Minas Tirith, dawn brought a vital reprieve for the defenders. The sun's rise lifted the spirits of Gondor's forces and weakened the resolve of Mordor's orcs. If no such reprieve existed, the Witch King's forces might have claimed victory before Rohan's arrival, or Aragorn's intervention with the army of the dead. The Fellowship's quest to destroy the One Ring would have been fraught with even greater peril. From their flight to Rivendell to Frodo and Sam's passage through Mordor, daylight often provided protection from orcs and ringwraiths alike. A fearless orc force would have meant unrelenting pursuit, giving Frodo and Sam no chance to evade capture. Without the natural deterrent of sunlight, the Fellowship might never have reached Mount Doom, leaving Middle-earth at the mercy of Sauron's dominion. This reimagining of historical events highlights how integral light was to the Free People's survival and victory. Removing this limitation from the orcs shifts the balance of power, creating a darker, more harrowing Middle-earth. In a world where orcs did not fear the light, the geopolitical and cultural landscapes of Middle-earth would undergo profound transformations. The delicate balance between the Free Peoples and the forces of darkness would tilt dramatically, reshaping alliances, settlements, and survival strategies across the ages. For much of Middle-earth's history, daylight served as a natural barrier, granting the Free Peoples crucial respite. Sanctuaries like Rivendell, Lothlorien, and the Shire benefited from the sun's protective reach. However, if orcs could march unhindered under Anor's rays, these havens would no longer be safe. Rivendell's remote location and Elrond's wisdom kept it hidden, but without the sun as a deterrent, orc armies might launch relentless assaults, forcing the sanctuary to fortify itself to a degree unseen in Tolkien's writings. Similarly, the Shire, with its open hills and defenseless hobbit inhabitants, would likely become a target for marauding orcs, leading to its complete militarization, or abandonment. Lothlorien, protected by Galadriel's power and the sun's aid, would face unending sieges. Orcs immune to light would nullify one of the forest's greatest defenses, leaving the Golden Wood vulnerable to destruction. Without the rhythm of light and darkness dictating the pace of war, Middle-earth's societies would evolve into a state of constant vigilance. Villages and cities would be forced to fortify themselves heavily, and roving patrols would become a necessity. The militarization of even peaceful regions, such as the Breelands, would alter the cultural fabric of Middle-earth. Trade routes that once depended on safe travel during daylight hours would become dangerous at all times. The great dwarven roads and the ancient paths through Eriador and Rohan might fall into disuse, cutting off key lines of communication and commerce between realms. The isolation of Gondor, Rohan, and the northern kingdoms could deepen, leaving each region to fend for itself against ceaseless orc incursions. The Free Peoples would likely be driven to form stronger and more enduring alliances. The loose cooperation seen in the early Third Age would give way to a tightly interconnected network of defense pacts. Dwarves, elves, and men, often divided by mistrust and historical grievances, would be forced to unite in a way unseen even during the War of the Ring. Even less conventional alliances might emerge. The Ents of Fangorn Forest, typically withdrawn, could be called upon to take a more active role in protecting nearby lands. The Eagles of Manwë might intervene more frequently, aiding beleaguered cities and armies. Perhaps even unexpected factions, such as rebellious orcs or the mysterious forces of the East, might offer uneasy truces to combat the shared threat of Sauron's unchecked legions. Magic, already vital to the Free People's survival, would gain even greater prominence. Artifacts such as the Fial of Galadriel, which contains the light of Eärendil's star, would become critical tools for combating the relentless orc armies. The Rings of Power, particularly Vilya, Nenya, and Narya, might be wielded more openly, despite the risks associated with their use. The Valar's role in Middle-earth could also shift. Seeing the sun's power diminished against the forces of darkness, they might intervene more directly, as they did during the War of Wrath. This interference could escalate the conflict to apocalyptic proportions, further blurring the line between divine will and mortal agency. The eradication of Orcs' fear of light reshapes Middle-earth into a land of ceaseless strife and forced unity. It is a world where every dawn carries the promise not of hope, but of enduring conflict, and survival becomes the ultimate act of defiance. In Tolkien's Legendarium, light is more than a symbol. It is a metaphysical force embodying hope, renewal, and the will of Eru Ilúvatar. Darkness, on the other hand, represents corruption, despair, and domination. The Orcs' fear of light aligns them with their creator, Morgoth, who loathed the two trees of Valinor and later the sun and moon. But what if this fundamental dichotomy was erased? Tolkien's works often present light as a universal good, offering sanctuary and strength to those who align with it. From the golden radiance of Lothlorien to the starlight guiding Frodo and Sam through Mordor, light is a beacon of resilience against overwhelming darkness. If orcs could roam freely under the sun, this moral order would be disrupted, suggesting that evil is no longer confined to shadow, but thrives equally under the light. Such a world might lose the thematic reassurance of renewal and triumph. In The Lord of the Rings, dawn often heralds hope, whether it's the arrival of Gandalf and the riders of Rohan at Helm's Deep, or the breaking of Mordor's darkness over Minas Tirith. If orcs were unaffected by the sun, these moments of hope would be diminished, leaving the free peoples to grapple with the unrelenting reality of an enemy that cannot be stopped by natural cycles. Without the physical limitation of light, orcs might also become more than simple instruments of darkness. Tolkien speculated in his letters about the possibility of orcs achieving redemption, as they were originally elves, corrupted by Morgoth. Orcs, although corrupted, were not beyond the reach of Eru's grace. They were as much a part of his creation as elves or men. A light-tolerant orc might indicate a shift in their moral alignment, or at least open the door to factions of orcs rebelling against their overlords. This scenario could create a more complex moral landscape, where orcs are no longer monolithic agents of destruction, but beings capable of agency and change. Tolkien's stories are deeply rooted in the endurance of hope, even when the odds seem insurmountable. This theme is most evident in Frodo and Sam's journey to Mount Doom, where they press on despite despair. If light loses its power over darkness, hope must adapt. The free peoples would need to find strength in unity, ingenuity, and faith in each other, rather than in the natural cycles of light and dark. In this reimagined Middle-earth, artifacts like the Phial of Galadriel or the Light of Eärendil would carry even greater significance, symbolizing that true light comes not from the sun alone, but from acts of courage and sacrifice. The Phial's ability to repel Shelob and sustain Frodo and Sam in Mordor would resonate as a reminder that even in the darkest times, a glimmer of hope can guide the way forward. Tolkien famously resisted allegory, but he invited applicability in his works. A Middle-earth where light does not deter darkness mirrors our own struggles with unrelenting challenges. It teaches us that even when familiar sources of strength falter, resilience and unity can forge new paths to victory. As Galadriel says in The Fellowship of the Ring, even the smallest person can change the course of the future. This sentiment would ring even truer in a world where orcs do not fear light, reminding us that hope must shine brightest in the face of unyielding adversity. The hypothetical removal of orcs' fear of light reshapes not only the battlefield, but the philosophical heart of Tolkien's Legendarium. It challenges the balance of power, deepens moral complexities, and transforms the struggle for hope into a more daunting yet profound endeavor. Middle-earth, though darker and harsher in this scenario, would remain a testament to the enduring strength of its peoples and their belief in a better tomorrow.